Welcome, everybody. Come on in. Let's get our webinar started. Give it a second here. Let's get our numbers up. All right. It's 10 o'clock. We're going to start. Thank you for joining me on the Fire Sim Lab module number 8, Assemblies. And we're going to go over a couple of ground rules, and then we're just going to jump in because there's lots to cover today. Number one, you will receive a recording of this. Okay, you'll get a recording of this probably in the next couple of days, and then you'll also get a certificate of completion as well in the next couple of days. And for the purposes of this, during the webinar, if you want to, I'd like to have anybody that wants to participate and speak, so I can activate your mic, and then you have to activate your mic also. So if you want to do perform a mental size up, or do an Unravel report, or discuss something, or bring up a point, that'd be great. If I ask a question in general and you want to answer it, just go to the chat room. If you want to talk to each other, go to the chat room. I don't really do the hands up feature. What I'll do is I'll look at the Q&A, and if you have any questions for the group or for yourself, just go to the Q&A, and I'll answer those as we kind of go through. Okay, so we've got about 60 people signed up, which I appreciate. And let's just jump into this. So I'm gonna do a screen share and do it with audio. In fact, I'm gonna do an optimized video clip also. So hold on one second here. All right. So assemblies. These are, different people use different terminology for different things, right? So when you look at assemblies, for example, what is that? Is an assembly a restaurant? Is it a bar? Is it what is an assembly? An assembly can be pieces of a building coming together. It depends on the code. It depends on what book you read, and that kind of stuff. And so for the purposes of this conversation, assemblies are going to be basically restaurants and bars, nightclubs, churches, halls. When I say a hall, like a men's club, women's club, kind of Kiwanis club, a theater, could be a movie theater, could be a live theater, concert venues, sporting arenas, school gymnasiums and multi-purpose rooms, libraries. So that's kind of the scope of this for when it comes to command and tactics, what you need to think about when it comes to assemblies. Okay, so here's some restaurants, right? Restaurants are not right now, they're not too full of people, but in general, we're not speaking COVID right now. We're speaking quote unquote normal, whatever that looks like anymore. But restaurants are an obvious one, and pre-planning is huge for you. So where's the restaurant? Is the restaurant sprinklered? Where is the kitchen? Where are the most likely places for ignition? And where are the exits? And what do you think people are going to do? They're going to evacuate the way they came in, which is the front door. 95% of people are going to try and go back the way they came. They're not thinking about a back exit. If a fire erupts, or smoke comes in, or a smoke alarm goes off, they're not going to be thinking about going to the rear exit or what's the closest exit. They're just going to go to the front door, which means what? You're going to have a funnel effect of all these people going in to the main entrance exit. And that's bad because people can get bottlenecked and trapped. People can get trampled and die, and you won't be able to get in that way as well. So there's a lot of problems there. Bars are included. So what's that? That's people who are inebriated, drunk. They're not responding appropriately to the situation, which adds to that victim profile of what's the challenge, right? And people just are there to have a good time. They're not thinking about like we do. They're not thinking about, oh, what if there's a fire? They're not thinking about, oh, where's the clearest or closest exit. They're not thinking about how many people, or is there too many people in here right now? They're just there to have a good time, drink, eat, party, dance. They're not thinking about that stuff. So they're caught off guard, and then panic ensues. And so you could pull up potentially into a situation with a massively huge confirmed victim profile, or you could pull up to something that's closed and there's little to no victim profile. okay, or a light, low victim profile. So here's your clubs, right? So the clubs, I mean, you've got pyrotechnics. We're going to go over one of the most infamous incidents in history. But you got pyrotechnics. You've got a lot of flammable decorations and decor. And you have people who are drinking. You have people who are dancing. And it's dark. And there's fog machines and everything. So you could have mass panic and hysteria easily ensue in one of these really quick. You got your gymnasiums, right? So now we're at a school, and there's a gym, and there's a basketball game or a concert or an assembly. So you've got a ton of people who are inside. And again, they're not thinking front, back, exit. They're thinking the way I came in, and they're all going to go that way. They're going to panic. They're not going to think. They're not going to take into consideration all the other people that are with them, as far as splitting up. So whatever I do, whenever I go to a movie theater or a play or a stand-up comedy or a gym, I'm always looking for the other exit, the back exit, and I either sit near that, or at least identify it and tell my wife that's the way we're going if something bad happens, because we're not going to compete with a whole herd of people. Okay. Churches, another example, right? Same thing. Panic. And don't forget people who are handicapped, people in wheelchairs, people who are invalid or need assistance. They're going to increase and complicate your victim profile. So that's really important as well. Okay. And don't think churches don't have, sources of ignition, candles, and so forth. So something to think about. So what is an assembly? It's basically a commercial building with a ton of people in it. Okay, and it's different. It's typically not compartmentalized. It can be, but typically isn't. And you show up, and you're going to have potentially mass hysteria and a lot of victims, or you could have it quiet and it's not occupied, like maybe a library, which you could argue whether a library is an assembly or not, or it's educational. But for the purpose of this, a library could be full of people, or it could be 2 a.m. and nobody's there. A church 2 a.m, probably nobody's there. A nightclub at 2 a.m, it might be packed. Okay, so something to think about. A church at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve or on Easter, totally different deal. So that's all part of your size up, right? Okay. Then you have theaters. Right now, COVID is up and running, so we don't have theaters occupied, but we're not thinking COVID. We're thinking about normally packed theaters. And guess what's going to happen after COVID? The theater is going to be packed with people. Top Gun 2 everyone's been waiting. I know I have for a long time for that movie to come out. There's a lot of great movies that have been stacking up. And when the theaters get back in business, they're going to be packed because people are just going to be going crazy. Then there's live theater, right? Live action theater. Again, pyrotechnics, decorations. Is it sprinklers? Is it not? One of the largest theaters in my hometown here in Carmel and Monterey area is been around for a long time. It's old and it's not sprinklered, and it's got the drapes and the curtains and the decor and the seating and the carpeting and all that rich decor and fabric and low mass synthetics that make it really cool, but it's also not sprinklered, and people don't think about the other exits. It's lethal. And so same thing, when I go there, I'm always looking at the other exits if I'm there to enjoy a show or something like that. Okay. But that's not what your victims are going to be doing. That's not what your potential victims are doing. Okay. So one incident we're going to look at before we jump too far in here is the um, station nightclub fire. And this fire is pretty notorious. This fire happened in 2003, in February 20th, 2003. You've probably seen the video. It's horrific. It was in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and 100 people were killed in a small, tiny nightclub. If you look at the picture on the top right there, small, tiny little nightclub, not that big of a footprint of a building, way overpacked. I mean, 100 people were killed. Another 230 were injured, and another 132 escaped without injury. So that's 462 people in that tiny little nightclub that you see there. So if you think that these nightclubs and places are going to be adhering to their fire prevention and fire code, they're not. This place was not sprinklered, even though it was supposed to be, and it was way overpacked. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it was a concert, and a fire started due to pyrotechnics and quickly enveloped the entire building and killed 100 people. It was horrific. That picture on the bottom left there, I wanted to show you that. His name is Joe Kinnan, and Joe survived that fire. You could see he is severely disfigured and had a major injuries from this and had hundreds of surgeries. But he went on. His girlfriend with him at the time was trampled to death. Well, she was asphyxiated. She died of smoke inhalation. But a lot of people were trampled to death. Most people died of asphyxiation before they were burned to death. A lot of people burned to death. And you can see here he's disfigured, but he went on to get married by the grace of God. He was blessed with a beautiful wife and a beautiful little girl, as you can see there. And unfortunately, she doesn't see him as anything other than daddy. But I want to show the video of that fire to show and put a graphic in your mind of what this actually looks like and how horrific this can be in short order. And some of you may have seen this, some of you may not have seen this, but I think this video is going to be very telling for you. I have it queued up right at the beginning of the fire here, so I'm going to start this.
On February 20th, 2003, 100 people lost their lives and 230 were injured in one of the deadliest nightclub fires in U.S. history. The fire was caused by pyrotechnics that were set off as the band Great White began to play its opening song. The illegal indoor use of outside fireworks led to the igniting of highly flammable soundproofing foam in the walls of the stage. Within 30 seconds of the fire starting, the entire stage was engulfed. Most of the 462 occupants ran for the narrow hallway of the front entrance. The entryway soon became packed with terrified people all trying to leave at once. Some were trampled to death as the frightened crowd tried to escape the smoke and flames that were...
So as you can see, there's people trapped in the main doorway here. They all ran, as you could see that previous clip, they were all just turned around, started running out away from the fire and back to where they came in. So there's people trapped in the doorway. There's people trapped behind them. There's people coming out, pouring out of the windows and trapped behind them.
were closing in behind them. In the chaos, the front door became a tangled mess of bodies as dozens of people piled on top of each other in a frenzied attempt to flee. Within 5.5 minutes, the entire club was engulfed in flames and hundreds of lives were lost and ruined. During the investigation, it was concluded that a fire sprinkler system would have contained the fire long enough for everyone to escape. Because of the building's age and size,
That's the Charlie side. Notice how it's venting inward. It's pulling air in. This is back by the stage, very quiet, versus the Alpha side, which is pure horror.
it was thought to be exempt from sprinkler system requirements. However, the building had undergone changes that removed its exemption from the law, a fact fire inspectors never noticed. On the night of the fire, the club was legally required to have a sprinkler system, but did not. On December 9, 2003, Daniel M. Beechel, the former road manager for Great White, and the two owners of the station nightclub, Jeffrey and Michael Derderian, were charged with 200 counts of involuntary manslaughter. The Derderians were also fined over $1 million for failing to carry workers' compensation insurance for their employees, 4 of whom died in the blaze. On February 7, 2006, Michael Beechel went against his lawyer's advice and pled guilty to 100 counts of involuntary manslaughter. During his sentencing, Beechel made a statement apologizing to the victims and families for his involvement in the fire. The judge sentenced Beechel to 15 years in prison, with 4 to serve and 11 suspended, plus 3 years probation. The judge said Beechel was highly unlikely to re-offend, which led to his decision to impose the sentence. On September 4, 2007, some families of the fire's victims expressed their support for Beechel's parole. The state parole board received approximately 20 letters, the majority of which expressed their sympathy and support for Beechel, pointing out that it was Beechel alone who stood up and admitted responsibility for his part in the horrible event. He had also sent handwritten letters to the families of each of the 100 victims. Beechel was released from prison on March 19, 2008. Following Beechel's trial, the station owners Michael and Jeffrey Derderian were scheduled to receive separate trials. However, on September 21, 2006, Superior Court Judge Francis J. Darrigan announced that the brothers had changed their pleas from not guilty to no contest, thereby avoiding a trial. Michael Derderian received 15 years in prison with 4 to serve and 11 years suspended, plus 3 years probation, the same sentence as Beechel. Jeffrey Derderian received a 10-year suspended sentence, 3 years probation, and 500 hours of community service. In January 2008, the parole board decided to grant Michael Derderian an early release. He was scheduled to be released from prison in September 2009, but was granted his release in June 2009 for good behavior.
Okay, terrible, terrible event, and one that raise your hand. We will do a hand raising for this one. Raise your hand if you've seen that video before, or clips of that video before. Some people call it the Great White Fire because that was the band playing. So only about 20 of you, so less than half of you, have seen it. So um, I'm glad we're able to bring it to light again, because it was such a terrible, terrible incident. And the memory of the people that died there needs to be honored, and we can't make the same mistakes again. As you'll note, there was fire prevention issues and code enforcement issues, but there was, there was plenty of blame to go around. I wouldn't blame the fire department at all. I think it was legitimate. They didn't notice what happened with the code enforcement stuff. What is amazing is that the men who were considered responsible owned it, and that the families of the victims supported them with some leniency. So what are some common pitfalls? Well, treating it like a residence, like a lot of commercial fires are, right? Not realizing that there's hundreds of people potentially you're going to. It's not an apartment complex where it's compartmentalized. Okay, an apartment complex is compartmentalized, and your fire spread, it won't be typically as rapid, right? Versus this, it's an open room, it's an open area, and you have decorations, decor, even pyrotechnics in this case, electrical in the overhead potentially, and that could just cause a rapid fire progression, especially if it's not sprinklered. So this is not a residence. If it's occupied, you're going to have the potential for a massive, massive victim profile. So risk assessment's huge. I can't overstate the importance of getting out and pre-planning your areas, pre-planning your buildings, pre-planning your target hazards, because that is absolutely critical. So about these places. Also know about events they're having if you can. If it's Halloween, who's doing some sort of Halloween haunted house where they're going to be pumping people through this thing, probably in a way that's not fit for the occupancy type, probably with a lot of extra combustibles in the form of decor and dividers and curtains and all that kind of stuff, potentially with more ignition sources. So, are you aware of those? Are you aware of concerts that are happening? Are you aware in your first due area what's going on, and are you walking through these places, going in the front and the back and looking at access and egress points for the victims and for your access and egress for search and evacuation? Okay. Victim profile could be potentially huge or low. Okay. If it's huge, it's because it's occupied. So you have to assume as you're responding, where am I going? What's the time of day? What's the day of the week? And if you're going to a church on a Tuesday afternoon, on an average Tuesday, that's different than going to a church on a Sunday morning, right? If you're going to a nightclub at 10 in the morning, is it different than going at 10 at night on a Saturday? So you're responding, you're thinking about these things, and hopefully even before that, you've done your pre-planning. So you have to think potentially huge victim profile. You have to get in there and put the water between the fire and the victims as soon as possible, and evacuate. Or you may show up and you may have a low victim profile. Everyone's evacuated. The fire started with only 2 or 3 employees on scene, and they evacuate. So what you don't want to do is go the opposite direction and find yourself where you're risking too much. You're getting in too fast, too deep without the proper resources. And you find yourself in a situation where it's a low victim profile and a lot of fire and a lot of combustibles, and you don't have the staffing to handle it. And you should retreat and do a tactical retreat to a potentially defensive position, but you actually go in deeper. Okay. So victim profiling is huge, very, very important. Misinterpreting the layout. If you've never been in these buildings at midnight on a dark and stormy night when it's burning and there's hundreds of people trapped, it's not the time to figure this place out. Do it during your pre-planning. So misinterpreting layout, there could be a basement you don't know about. There could be mezzanines and people above. In in a theater, you might have a mezzanine level with people above looking down. You may have offices. You might have a combination of offices and seating. So it's all about pre-planning, getting victim profiling, and getting a manager if you can early. Small caliber hose lines, again, like I've said before, taking a knife to a gunfight, not okay, not okay. Um, at the same time, however, while you're putting water on the fire to contain the fire to effect rescue, what would you have done for those victims on the front end of that building? Cut open the doorway, get them out, cut open the windows without cutting people and getting them out. Not supporting the first stretch. You may have to get multiple hose lines in place, but if you don't get a good water supply and support the first stretch, you may be acting in futility. So make sure that a good size up, a good arrival report, and if the first in needs support and needs, hey, I need you to help me with a stretch, I need you to get a water supply. Second in, make sure you're clear about that. If conversely the first in is a 4-person engine, they have a good water supply, and they can do some good things on the front with a rapidly deployed hose line and evacuating people or pulling them out rapidly, then maybe the second in goes to the back. But it all starts with that first in. Don't walk into this or drive into this like it's a house fire. Okay. Evacuation versus search. And we're going to talk about that in this module and also on the next one on commercials. Evacuation versus search for multiple locations. So in a typical large commercial building, or even a building like this, you're probably thinking more like evacuate, get as many people out as possible versus going in and searching and extracting one person or two people, like out of an apartment or a smaller office or something like that. This is a larger venue with a lot of people. So the more people that you can evacuate, the better. So what's that mean? That means cutting open openings. That means putting hose lines in place and taking advantage of every opening you can to make pathways for people to get out. And if they become clogged, then opening up those pathways, whatever means necessary, forcible entry, saws, whatever. But again, in that case, I can't imagine being the firefighters on that horrible fire and having to decide what to do first and how to do it. If you have all these people trapped, you can't just pull them out. You have to make way for them in a larger capacity. So are you going to cut the door open? If you do, are you going to be cutting through people? I don't know. But the point is evacuation and search are two different things, and you want to be considering that. Okay, opening and evacuating and getting people out and opening doorways and directing people out versus search, but also what hose lines in the right place and to hold the fire back. Okay, staying in the fight too long if it's evacuated. You pull up to this thing and it's a church and it's a Thursday at noon and no one's around, or it's a Thursday at 2 in the afternoon and one or two people are there and they get evacuate. Yet you have a large amount of fire and you want to go in and put this fire out. That's not okay. So it's the opposite now. Now it's restraining yourself and holding back and going into either a defensive or a combination strategy. So it's really that ongoing size up. And again, like I say on every one of these modules, it's about the victim profile. It's about starting with the victim profile. Okay. No RIC or inadequate RIC versus not enough evacuation. So again, starting from the victim profile, if it's a low victim profile, then my priority is going to be more like RIC or maybe multiple RICs if it's a large church, for example, or a theater. Versus what you have 100 people trapped and now we need to evacuate them and get as many out as possible. That's different, and that may not require RIC, or you may not have the resources for RIC in that moment. So calling those additional alarms and getting them coming in, but that strong incident command, that strong ICS of divisions or groups, or divisions and groups working in concert as you pour resources into this thing. So on the one hand, we're risking too much for a vacant large building without RIC. On the other hand, we don't have enough resources evacuating. We do have RIC. So those are two things that are out of alignment. You've heard me talk about alignment, right, in these modules. It starts with the priority, the strategy, and then the tactics from the top down. And so if you're in a property or incident stabilization priority, and then you switch from that to, okay, I'm going to be there for in defensive or combination, then you better not have crews inside, or certainly not in the defensive spaces, right? Or if you're in an offensive strategy and you're trying to confine the fire, do you have adequate RIC resources? Versus what? A life priority with victims trapped, and we're going in and we're going to keep calling resources in. So again, incident alignment's a critical piece of this thing. Mission creep. If it's evacuated and all of a sudden we don't realize that it's evacuated, we don't realize we should be in a defensive strategy. Because remember, size up's continuous. We're always readjusting. IC stands for what? Incident chiropractor. So the if everyone's evacuated, or if very few people are on scene and you get them out and now it's a low victim profile, and yet crews are pouring in by the dozen into this big assembly like a church or a gymnasium, and conditions are deteriorating, that's mission creep. And we're like, uh-oh, that's where the IC has to make that adjustment. All units back out, all companies back out, divisions, I want a par of all resources, we're going defensive. Again, because of the victim profile, okay? And then look for the lack of tactical supervision, okay? Early on, divisions and groups. So, an Alpha and a Charlie is probably a good opener based on where the evacuation points and exits are. An Alpha, a Charlie, an Alpha, a Bravo. If it's big enough, maybe Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. It just depends on the box. But if you have known victims, you may support it with a rescue group that goes in for a targeted search from the Charlie side. It just depends on how it's set up. Um, but get that tactical supervision early. Make sure you have medical and you're probably going to have a medical group or even a medical branch. If you have that many victims, as you saw, they had over 100 injuries on top of the 100 fatalities in that fire. So span of control, all the stuff we always talk about. It's really not rocket science if you have a methodical, systematic way of sizing up what you have, of determining your priority, your strategy, your tactics, your resource needs, your comm plan, and your ICS. And that's just recycling that process constantly. FPOD P, FPOD P, FPOD P. Okay. All right. Are there any questions? I'm going to go down to the Q&A board here. Are there any questions yet about anything we've talked about? Can you guys, I hope you can hear me. Hopefully I haven't been talking to myself. Raise your hand if you can hear me okay. All right, great. Any questions before we start looking at sims? Okay. All right, what I'd like to do is spend as much time as we can on simulations today, because they're all going to be a little bit different, right? So with that, I'm going to take us to simulations. I'm going to start at number 46. So let me tell you about this. If you haven't seen it before, this is what we call our Fire Sim Lab, and this is a new course that we're going to be launching after the first of the year, where you'll have access to 100 sims. Now, if you are participating in the online Mastering the Fire Service Assessment Center course, thank you. If you're participating in that course, this comes with it. If, however, you want to just focus on strategy, tactics, incident command, fireground operations, either simulations for a promotional test or just to get better at your job or develop your officers, that's what this course is for. So what we've done is we've created a online course that's standalone aside from the full assessment center course. So if you just want to focus on sims or developing officers in the dimensions of fireground tactics and strategy and command. So basically, this kind of shows you how it works. It's an opening here, and the required material for this really is it's going to be standalone. What we have here for you are tactical worksheets. So I don't think we've gone over a tactical worksheet yet in this course, in this sim lab, but this is an example of a tactical worksheet that we have. We have them for structure fires, vegetation fires, MCIs, and hazmats. And they're in the assessment center book, but they're also in this course. And so we always use the SAW-Cs, RECOVs acronym on the left there for all kinds of tactical worksheets. And so what we're going to do is go through this tactical worksheet quickly and then apply it to our simulations as we go through them. Okay, so let me show you another example of a sim here. So we've got our tactical worksheet right there. And I'm going to go up to so there's 16 different categories of simulations. residential, lightweight, modern, legacy. There's taxpayers, high-rise, mid-rise, center hall, garden apartments, duplexes, fourplexes, and they total 100 sims. And you can get this course starting after the first year. We'll make a big announcement so that you can have it. But the other cool thing is that with every simulation is what we call a tactical review guide. So it's basically a self-paced course, probably about 25 hours. There's 100 sims, so you do the math. If you do them one every 15 minutes, then that's probably about 25 minutes. But you can see here, this is the assembly section on the left, and we're going to go through some of these. So let's start with number 46, which is a church with light cold smoke. So you hit that button, and your church with light cold smoke comes up, as you can see here. All right, and you can expand the screen. We're going to hit the sim, and we're going to start the sim. Now the cool thing is there's what I call a tactical review guide with every simulation. We developed one for every single simulation. So all 100 sims have a guide to walk you through best practices for that incident. So what would you be considering en route if you're a company officer or if you're a chief officer? What would you be considering upon arrival? Company officer, chief officer, what's your FPOD-P? What's your arrival report? What are your ongoing operations? What would you do after your lap? What would be your ICS? What would be your transfer of command, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll show you an example of a response guide for this particular simulation, okay? So Q&A here. Yeah, here's a great comment. Just a comment, we have several restaurants in converted single-family residences. Absolutely. Don't trust what you see on the outside. Homes and duplexes are constantly changed. Just consider the ghost ship fire in Oakland. And can I enlarge it? Hopefully you can see it better, and I just enlarged it for you. All right. Okay, so this church, I'm going to check the chat room real quick. All right. So this is a church. It's midday. It's obviously not high occupancy, so it's probably a low victim profile. And we're going to say this is a church on a Tuesday. And notice you have light smoke. Okay, so we're going to do a lap of this. Go around here to the Bravo side. This is the parking lot Bravo side. This is the Charlie side in the back. This is the Delta side, which has a little field next to it. And then back to the Alpha side. Okay. So you pull up to this, and there's, as you saw, there's like one vehicle here, and it's not Sunday, and it's during the day. So you can assume, hopefully, a low victim profile. But again, get information from the occupant or occupants as soon as possible, because that's really critical. So what we can do here is with this button over to the left, we can move left or right around the building. We can also use this arch to escalate the fire. And then that would be the same escalation around the whole building as you go around the building, and you could also have knockdown. Okay. So what I'd like to do is see if there's anybody who would like to do an FPOD-P of this. So what I'm going to do is going to go from screen sharing to a different view and see if anybody would like to do an FPOD-P of that. So Jim, you got your hand up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you to talk, but you have to turn on your mic. So I don't know if Jim Alercia, if you want to talk, I'm going to see if you'll want to talk with us on this. But you have to activate your mic, Jim, if you want to do an FPOD-P. Hey, Jim.
How you doing?
Good, brother. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the church here. So you're familiar with the FPOD-P size up system? Let me ask you this. What do you know for sure? You pull up to this. What are the facts? What do you know for sure about this incident right now?
Without doing a 360 yet, yes, obviously have smoke showing on the alpha side. So you have some type of a working structure, working fire in the front of the, and in the alpha side. And then after doing that 360, you can make a pretty good determination that the fire is somewhere in the front of the alpha side.
Okay, good. So the probabilities are then that the fire's on the alpha side. So the fact is, we're going to call this a Tuesday at noon. It's a church, and I've got moderate smoke out the alpha side of a church. Probabilities then would be what, like you said, probability of what, a fire on the towards the alpha side. Hopefully, a probability of a low victim profile because one car, but we don't know for sure, right? Where do you work?
Where I'm in the eastern part of Pennsylvania.
Okay, so what would you get on this incident on a Tuesday with smoke showing from a church?
Well, I'm a volunteer department, so Tuesday during the day would be 2 chief officers in command trucks, and then maybe a 4-man ladder truck and a 3-man engine. So,
Okay, so
based on, if I pulled up on that, based on what I'm getting from my own department on that day and time, I don't automatically go to a second alarm, which is going to bring 5 additional fire departments.
excellent, excellent. So now what's your decision? Now, when I say what's your decision, let's start with the priority. Is this a life priority? Is this an incident stabilization priority? Or is this a property and environment priority?
It's going to be a low life priority. Only you obviously have to take that into consideration because of the vehicle that's in the parking lot. So
right. So hopefully a low to moderate victim profile and a life priority. So therefore, our strategy. Would you agree that our strategy would be offensive?
Yes.
Yeah. In other words, we're not going to stay outside. We're not going to go defensive. We're going to go offensive, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. So our plan then, in other words, our first 3 tactical objectives would be what? What would you want to do first?
When I would ride, well, again, it'd be the 360.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my first apparatus would arrive on scene, it would be, if I would have to force entry, I'd force entry probably right into either the alpha side front door or the Bravo side door, and search for number 1, that possible victim, and number 2, the seat of the fire.
Good. So now, is it possible that we see a little bit of smoke from a large building, but it's actually a pretty big fire just because the box is big?
Sure. Yeah. It looks like if you would go in that alpha side door, you're going to walk through a lobby and then directly into what would be the sanctuary of the church.
Right.
So yeah, you could have a large fire, but the smoke's inside that sanctuary there.
Now, notice that this is a really high A-frame roof, right?
Yes.
Pretty safe to say there's not an attic space, right? It's a
I
big
would think
giant,
not.
yeah. So we're not thinking attic or cock loft or anything like that. So is it possible that you could have a fire and there's smoke in the upper regions of this building, but we just don't see it because of the scope and size and type of the construction?
Sure. It just hasn't found a way to exit the building yet.
Yeah. Maybe the fire started towards the front, but it's rolling up above and we don't know it yet. It's just, we just see a little bit of smoke. So that's why I think you ordered those, additional resources from all the different fire departments, right?
Sure, because of the time of the day and because of the size of the building.
Exactly, right. And if you have volunteers and it's during the week, I'm guessing their response time is a little bit longer than if it was on the weekend. Am I right?
Sure, longer and more short staffed.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking, let's force this door. Let's get a secondary access. Let's find out where the occupant of that van is and get more information and call additional resources and be ready for a major fire until proven otherwise. And we might need to be in recon, right? We might need to be in recon mode, meaning we don't know where the fire is. It's not a big, obvious fire. It's just a bunch of smoke everywhere. And we need to recon where it's coming from. Maybe it's a small electrical fire towards the front,
Yeah.
So we could be in a recon. Okay, good. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, gang. So we're going to do another one. And this next one, so let's go over the review guide for this particular one we just looked at, because I want you all to see what the review guides look like in this course if you choose to access it. So here we are, and we're looking at the tactical review guide for this simulation number 46, which is a church with light cold smoke. So notice we have en route our company officer considerations and our chief officer considerations. So let's go through those rapidly. So company officer, I'm thinking about time and weather, thinking about route and hydrants, victim profile, tact channels, and other units, right? What's the
Yep.
difference between that and a chief? Well, I'm thinking about what updates. I'm thinking about maybe medic units, additional companies, which is what you were thinking. So I'm thinking you're a chief officer. Am I right?
You're correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you were thinking about that stuff, which is beautiful. So you're thinking a little further ahead on the incident.
Sure.
Then we have arrival and using the FPOD-P system, which was developed by Lloyd Lehman, right? We talked about facts, what we know for sure. It's a large church, light smoke. Probabilities: low to moderate victim profile, working fire that could be venting, or a sprinkler could be controlling it. Maybe that's why it's looking the way it is. Maybe, right?
Hmm.
Own situation is our resource level. If I'm a company officer, I'm thinking, okay, I'm first in company with a balance of a response and route. But if I'm a first in chief, I'm thinking I'm the first chief with maybe 1 or 2 companies on scene already, and the balance coming. And what? Call additional medic unit, and in your case, additional units overall because of the time of day and the resource levels. So that was
Right.
great. Decision is our first decision. So all this, the first FPO that's just finding out what we got. What do we know for sure? What do we not know for sure? And what's coming? And then decisions are our first decision. We make that big first decision from the top down, right? Which is what? Life priority, offensive strategy. And what happens in fires a lot, and this is what gets us in
Offensive
trouble.
strategy. Correct.
Yeah. What happens in fires a lot is that people jump right into the tasks instead of thinking from the top down. What's my decision? What's my priority? What's my strategy? Then what's my tactics? And then what's my tasks? But what do we do as firefighters? And you've seen this, chief. They just show up and start doing stuff. They just start with tasks, right?
Sure.
So they show up and they go, break that door down, instead of thinking, okay, hold on a second. Let's size up what we have. What's our priority? Okay, it's life, which drives my what? Strategy, which is offensive, which drives my what? Tactics, which in this case are what? Maybe recon, access the front door, get a second means of access, get a water supply, and find out where the occupant is. And then our tasks. Okay, let's force the front door. Let's get a hose line. Let's get a water supply. I'm going to go find the lady. And then we reevaluate, because if we open it and it's a skunking electrical fire that's being held in check by his sprinklers, that's different than a rolling fire that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, right? Or
Sure.
somebody wrote Advent candles that are burning, right? They got the curtains going. So notice the plan, which is the tactical level. So if the decision is the strategic level, the plan is the tactical level, which is the next step before we get into tasks. So what's my plan? I'm going to pull the apparatus past into the rear parking lot, enter the A side front doors for fire tech and recon, notify the incoming companies, bring the first truck in to assist and access recon passing command. However, I'm still in command if I'm the first in company until a chief shows up. So notice the plan for a company officer is a little more task oriented versus a chief. It's a little more tactically oriented. Notice the difference here. Chief, set up command objectives: recon, confine, search, ensure that at least 1 transporting medic's on scene, available at all times, set up division A initially, and then we'll have multiple companies working, entering from the A side. That's our initial glance at this thing. Notice the difference between the company and the chief officer plans, right? Is the one's a little more in the weeds than the other. Problem is people show up and they don't do any of this stuff. They don't do any of the stuff up here, and they jump right into, I'm gonna pull the rig past, we're gonna go in the front door. And they don't think about the bigger picture. They don't even notice how many cars in the driveway. They don't notice anybody that's trying to give them information or a victim profile, and that gets us in trouble. So then we get into operations down here, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of this. So what are our safety concerns? Well, for this, we talk about, because it's probably a low to moderate victim profile, RIC or 2 out should be a high priority. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. If it's evacuated, but if it's potentially occupied, you might proceed with caution and be ready for a condition to deteriorate. Okay. Because once you open a flow path, that could, make conditions worse a little bit. So that's your safety. Rescue, consider large area search, evacuate if occupied. However, low to moderate victim profile indicates less aggressive mode, meaning that there's just 1 car. What would be the difference, Chief, if this was Sunday at 11:30 and about 50 cars in the driveway?
I think I would have to say I would go back to what we talked about with the nightclub fire.
Exactly.
You're going to have to find a second, maybe third, like again, it's Sunday morning, a 4th means of access for those people that are inside that possible sanctuary, inside the classrooms to evacuate, whether the size of the fire is like you said, rolling, or it is a small fire because you obviously have a smoke condition. So
Yeah.
you're going to need multiple exit points.
Yeah, and if you watch that full or other views of that Great White Fire video on YouTube, if you just Google Great White Fire,
Mhm.
what's shocking and chilling is how slowly people react to what's actually happening. You know, they just kind of slowly turn around and start walking towards the front
Right.
door, and then all of a sudden they start panicking and trampling each other and get stuck. And so you could potentially show up and have people stuck in doorways, people trampled. Some people are out, some people are still inside. Mass hysteria. It could be really, really ugly. Um,
Sure.
Ben asked, he goes, Chief, you said low to moderate victim profile. The car suggests staff or maintenance person inside, and they did not meet you at the door. It's not huge. It's not huge assembly victim profile, but moderate to high seems more reasonable to me than lower to moderate. Thoughts? That's a great point. I like what you're thinking, Ben. I like the fact that you're thinking critically. And so, just for all of you who haven't heard it before, when I talk about victim profile, there's four. There's low, moderate, high, and confirmed. Low is you pull up and no one's around to tell you anything. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Low is you pull up and a credible source tells you everyone's out. Okay, a credible source says everyone. So in this case, the maintenance guy who has the van comes up and says, "I'm the only one here. I was doing some welding and I started a fire. The curtains are on fire and I put it out, but I'm not sure if it's all the way out." That's a low victim profile. You pull up, and to Ben's point, nobody's tells you anything. It could be a house, it could be an apartment, it could be this, and it's midday and no one's around to tell you anything. That's at least a moderate victim profile. Okay. If you pull up to this and it's an apartment, or you pull up to this and it's got multiple cars in the driveway, or it's during church hours, then that's a high victim profile. If you pull up and a credible witness says there's still people trapped, then that is a confirmed victim profile. And then you go into what we call the signal method of profiling who's in there, how many of them are in there, where are they, what's their status. So to Ben's point, I think you could say moderate to high. To me, a for sure high would be multiple cars during church services, and a confirm would be somebody, we pull up and there's obvious people trapped, or we're told that people are trapped. Does anybody do me a favor, gang, so I just kind of know, raise your hand if you need me to review the signal method of victim profiling, if you want me to review what signal means. Okay. So signal, if you have a confirmed victim profile, so you pull up and somebody yells, "There's people trapped," or "My family's trapped," or there's a family trapped inside," or whatever, then you do what we call the signal method. And signal stands for species, first of all. Is it human? And that may sound ridiculous, but I'm sure everybody listening to this webinar has been on a fire where you were told, "My baby's trapped and my baby is a cat," right? So is it human? Number two, incapacity. Is the victim inside, or victims inside, do they have an incapacity we need to be aware of? In other words, are they morbidly obese? Are they blind? Are they deaf? Are they in a wheelchair? What's their situation that may make it more difficult to get them out than just the average garden variety victim who we need to get out? Next one is gender. If you're looking for a male and you find a female, you're looking for a female, you find a male, guess what? You have more than one victim, which often happens because in the state of panic, people don't realize how many people are really inside, or you have would-be rescuers go back in to try and get family out or friends out, and they become trapped. So if you're going in for a male and you find a female, guess what? You have more than one victim. N stands for number. How many people? Not just my family's inside, but how many? Okay. And age. My family's inside. Okay. How many? There's four of them. Okay. What are their ages? My grandparents are in there and they're in their 80s, and my brother and sister, and they're both they're 10 and 12. And then location. Location is pretty huge because location tells us where to target our search if we can. Instead of just going aimlessly, maybe we choose VES because they point to a window. If they say they're in the house, that's not good enough. If they say they're in their bedroom, that's not good enough. They have to say they're in their bedroom on the upstairs back bedroom on the left. They're not going to say A, B, C, D, but they could, if you ask them the right questions, you'll get good information. And this shouldn't take more than about 10 seconds. And 10 seconds signal, just think of somebody signaling you. A 10-second signal is going to pay you huge dividends of you not searching the wrong area, not searching for the wrong person, and being under a misinterpretation of what's really going on. And instead of searching from the front door, you decide to do a targeted VES on the Charlie side for one victim in the back instead of starting from the front of a two-story. So for example, on this church, you may be told, yeah, there's one person, Bob, he's 50 years old, and he is in the sanctuary, which is to the rear of the building. When I saw him last, he was trying to put the fire out. I haven't seen him since. Perfect. Now we know as much as we possibly can, which is better than just they're inside. Somebody's in there. Okay, go get them out. And again, it's 10 seconds. And I trained my whole battalion to do this. I want everybody thinking victim profile. Okay. All right. So, so anyway, this whole tactical review guide is there's one specific to every single incident of all 100 simulations. So it's a tool for you to use in the self-paced course. Okay. All right. Thank you, brother. We're going to let Jim go, and let's bring up our next scenario, which is going to be number 47, also a church, but different conditions this time. Get rid of that. So we're going to do a full screen, start the sim. Now we've got a church with fire showing, okay? And we'll talk about different variations of this as far as time of day and occupancy level. But right now, let's just do a quick lap of this. So you've got the Alpha Bravo corner. You have heavy fire blowing out what's probably the sanctuary area. Okay, here's the Bravo Charlie corner going back around. And the fire kind of grows a little bit. So it goes from that to this. And Chris, I've got your hand up, but I don't know if you want to do this, but somebody raise your hand. Anybody raise your hand if you'd like to have your mic hot for the next scenario. Ben Norton. All right, Ben, I'm going to allow you to talk. So go ahead and activate your mic, Ben.
Okay. Can you hear me, Chief?
Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us, brother.
All righty.
So why don't all incidents start with a good size up? So give us an FPOD P of this from this view.
Okay. Facts. It's midday. I have a fire showing from the Bravo corner. Appears to be, a large one-story assembly. I don't see much wind. I don't see any cars in the parking lot. Yeah.
Probabilities.
Probabilities. I'm going to say low victim profile. Nobody's meeting me outside and the parking lot was empty. I don't know what day it is, but I'm going to say that's not Sunday.
Let's call it Tuesday at 2 p.m.
Okay. Tuesday at 2. Yeah. So I'll stay with my low victim profile.
Okay.
Probabilities. The fire's probably in the assembly space and it's already self-vented out that Bravo side. I show smoke across the eaves. So I'm saying there's a lot of fire in there. That's probably, I'm getting ahead of myself there.
That's
so
okay.
Probabilities, lots of fire there. The other end of the structure, I'm going to say there's survivable space down there, probably.
Mm-hmm.
My own situation, I'll say I'm showing up as a single engine and I'm now going to upgrade to a working fire, and that'll give me 4 engines and 2 ladders.
Good.
Battalion MSO.
And where do you work?
Medic.
So everybody knows, where do you work?
Redmond, Washington.
Beautiful. Good. And then
Yep.
Your decision is what priority?
Yeah, my decision, we're going to call this offensive strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The assembly very well likely, depending on my 360, could be defensive itself. I'm thinking there's so much fire load in there. There's not much to save, but the other end, other end of the building, that
To
is
the right.
survivable space.
Hmm.
Yep. So I'm going to call it offensive, and then as I do my 360, I'll probably clarify the assembly portion is defensive, and then it looks like the compartmentalized classroom portions will be savable offensive.
Okay, great. And so your tactics then, or your plan, is to, it sounds like, put a line right in here in the middle, and kind of
Yeah, I'm going to
stop any fire progress.
correct, Chief. Yeah, I'm going to do my 360, set up a command, an ICS. Um, that'll be my first priority. I'll probably do a quick lap and tell my firefighter to stay at the engine until I get a better idea of if we can make an effect on that assembly. If not, I'll tell them to pull a line, yes, to where you were saying, to try to cut it off
Okay,
into the livable space.
good.
Um,
And so, what would anything be wrong with doing a couple of things? I think confining the fire here, making a stop here in the center is great. Is
okay.
there anything wrong with having another company, while you're doing that, go over to the, we'll call it the Alpha Bravo corner, and knock the snot out of this with a deck gun?
I think that would be a great idea.
Because look at the fence, look at the wall, right? See the wall? There's kind of a wall here and a window, and it's kind of elevated.
Hmm.
So anything wrong with an adequate water supply? You're in an elevated position, hitting this a little real quick with a tank of water, or with a supply in a tank of water, and just knocking the snot out of it, because maybe the fire is just right here and it's vented through this out this window, and while that's happening, we're over here, and we're going to stop any progression. This might be nothing more than just smoke with little fire between the fire and the entry point over here. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so the fact that it's vented is a good thing. And I don't typically like putting water into windows that have vented, even though it's considered transitional attack. There's a time and a place. But when you're dealing with, in this case, a lower victim profile, you're dealing with a lot of access around the building. You're dealing with virtually no cars in the driveway. You come around, there's nobody, screaming, yelling, and trying to get in or anything. You clearly are going to cut the fire off in the center, but maybe we make it safer for everybody by just hitting the heck out of it with that deck gun. And then once that knock is done, then we enter from the we'll call it the A side, and then kind of reassess and resize up what we have.
Yeah, I like that, Chief. I think the first do, I would still pull a line to protect it, the 2.5. But the second do engine deck gun makes a lot of sense. And then my first do ladder, probably some sort of ventilation profile, possibly a strip cut to prevent any spread. I can't really see, it doesn't appear there's a connected attic space there.
Yeah,
But I'll let them determine that.
Yeah, you can't really. I don't think there is in this occupancy. Here's the kind of Charlie Delta view, if you will. Again, nobody's here. So now this is a totally different animal than Sunday at 11 in the morning with cars everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And is it possible, and I hate to say this, but is it possible that this is a terrorist act? Is it possible this is an intentional start? It's during the week, no one's around, they don't want to hurt anybody, but they do want to send a message, right? It's a religious facility, and maybe somebody shows up and says, I don't like what they're doing here. And I mean, look what happened recently this past week, shooting at a church. So if people are willing to kill parishioners at a church, they're certainly willing to burn the place down. And maybe this is nothing more than a Molotov cocktail that got thrown in, and just hit the glass and took off. And maybe a little bit of it got inside the building. But notice the smoke. This is a pretty high ceiling. Would you agree? Right? Nice big A-frame ceiling.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yet we have what? We have smoke pouring out this lower area. What does that tell you potentially?
Well, I mean, it's coming out of the eaves. I don't really know what I would make of that.
What I'm seeing
there's
here,
probably not an attic.
No, there's not, right? So what I'm saying, my point is this: is if this is this big A-frame looking church, right? Which means it's an open. There's no vents, nothing. So this is a big open beam ceiling, typical A-frame church, right? Big sanctuary. And if I have smoke pouring out down low like this, that tells me that this whole entire overhead is full of smoke, if not fire. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And that's why the deck gun, because you can at least put a little punch in this thing. And if this is the main seat of fire, you may be able to take a little bit of the heat out of it. And then at the same time, once that's done, come in and prevent lateral spread. Okay. What we don't want is that these two things to be happening simultaneously. Would you agree?
Yeah.
In other words, I'm not going to have crews trying to go in with a 2.5 from this, the right side, while a decan is in play on the left side. That's going to be opposing lines. That's going to probably be ugly. Okay. But can we do a quick knock and then reset and then attack the fire with a 2.5 from the right? And I'm expecting with it, because of the smoke, I'm not too worried about the fire. What I'm worried about is the smoke that I'm seeing low. That tells me that at the very least, there's smoke all the way through this upper area, and smoke is a fuel. And there's a potential, because this thing is vetted now, for this thing to backflow. This probably isn't enough ventilation for this fire if it's actually an interior structure fire or a fire that started outside that's working its way inside. There's a potential here for this whole overhead to ignite, because that is a fuel. And when I see smoke low like this, that tells me this whole upper area is saturated and starting to bank down. So that's a real big, that should be a really big tell to everybody, okay, that's watching this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Chris is talking about ribbed metal roof, possibly lightweight construction. Okay, I'm not putting people on that roof for multiple reasons. If I am going to vertically vent, it's going to be off of a ladder, not on the roof itself. And even then, it's a little tenuous. It goes back to what's our priority, what's our strategy. If we determine this is not life, but this is incident stabilization, then I'm not going to risk as much as if it was 11:30 on a Sunday with 300 people there. Okay. All right, brother. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks, Chief.
Yep. Yeah, from Kelly. That's basically what we talked about, was transitional attack from Kelly. That's exactly what we were just talking about. Coming around to the left and knocking this while having other crews go here. That's basically transitional attack. What I'm not going to do is do both by myself. One company's doing this, a separate company is doing this, and this requires what? It requires coordination. So a strong incident command, setting up a division alpha here, potentially a division Bravo over here, is what's going to prevent those two companies from opposing each other and getting in trouble. Okay. All right, let's look at another one. 55. All right, we're going to enlarge this one. And this is now a restaurant. We're going to say this restaurant is occupied, that it's happy hour on a Saturday in the summertime. That's why it's still light out. It's 5 o'clock-ish, happy hour on a Saturday, and highly occupied. And you come around. This is your Bravo side. This is the, basically this is the A side. The entrance is back here on the left of the little gas pumps. Those are decorative. This is all decorative. The whole restaurant is in the theme of race cars. So don't let that throw you. This is not a auto shop. This is a restaurant. And then you come around this courtyard here, and the main entrance there's two entrances. There's one here by the kitchen where the heavy fire is, and there's one to the right. These are both entrances on the Bravo side. This is the Charlie Delta side. This is basically the rear. The kitchen would be back to the right over here. And here we are back at the Alpha side here, Alpha Delta corner, if you will. Okay, so raise your hand if you'd like to talk us through this. Anybody? Raise your hand, anybody that wants to talk through this. Anybody? Nobody wants to talk through this? I'm looking. Okay, Larry. Thanks, Larry. All right, Larry, I've got you. You've been allowed to talk. Go ahead and activate your mic if you can.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So what are you thinking as we do our lap here?
Okay. As I was doing the lap, it looks like this is a one-story restaurant. Is
Okay.
that correct?
Take a look at this corner. What do you see right here?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's going to be a two-story. We got
There may be maybe offices. Yeah.
Yep. Or
the
a
back.
storage
Or
room.
storage. Yeah. Storage or offices. Okay.
Okay. All right. So facts. I have a two-story wooden converted structure into a restaurant. Probabilities, low. Well, you said
You said
initially
it's
that
occupied. It's
that's
Saturday at
occupied.
5 o'clock. So there's just, I know it's hard to
So-
picture, but imagine a ton of people screaming and yelling and mayhem and trying to escape, and people are in the parking lot, people are in this patio area.
Yep. So high victim profile with heavy fire and smoke involvement. My own situation on a call like that, I would probably get what we call a 3-and-3 response. Be 3 engines, 3 trucks, staffed with 4 personnel plus a battalion chief, and probably a medical lieutenant as well.
Okay.
Responding to this, my decision on this, as I'm getting the 360, looks like there's pretty heavy involvement within the restaurant
Yep.
area itself. Interior. Yep. I would want to hit this with a 2.5. See what kind of knockdown I get with that 2.5, and then make decisions as far as do I need to get more in the rescue mode? Did that fire push out more people where they were able to self-rescue?
Are you looking at this from a chief point of view or a company officer?
I'm looking at this from a first-in company officer on an engine.
Okay. So let's think that when we get to the plan part, that's where we bifurcate, and it's a little different for a chief than a company officer, right? So if I'm a company officer on this and I pull up to this thing, I've got heavy fire now. It's starting to roll. It's going to flash, and I'm over here. I'm gonna pull. And do you have three person or 4-person engine?
We have 4-person.
Okay, good. So 4-person company, I'm going to put a 2.5 on this thing as soon as possible, right in here, to create. What am I trying to create?
You're trying to create a savable space. You're trying to knock down that fire.
Yeah, an exit passage for the victims, right? A rescue
Yep.
passage. So I'm going to knock the snot out of this. I'm not going. The reason I'm not doing transitional over here is that does nothing to help the people who are going to be pouring out of these doors right here.
Yep.
The reason they're pouring out of these doors is because this is the entrance. So they're all going to be trying to go out the way they came in. And so I'm going to pull past it. I see this. I'm going to pull a 2.5. You have the benefit of 3 of you. So if it was or 4 of you, if it was 3 of you, I might even lean towards an 1.75 because of the staffing problem. Because there's 4 of you, I can get away with a 2.5 a little easier, right?
Yep.
So so that's where I'm going to put that first hose line, right? And then I'm going to let everybody know I'm doubling the alarm, I'm tripling the amount of ambulances, and I need a water supply really fast. If I don't have a water supply, I may go with the 1.75, even though I have 4 of us. If I do have a water supply, then I'll probably use the 2.5. But if I don't have a water supply, the importance of this is getting water on that fire as fast as possible. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. So if I'm not going to screw around with a hydrant, if I don't have a hydrant readily close, the second it needs to bring it to me, and I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm going to think probably 1.75. But if I have a hydrant right in front of the engine, or within 50 feet of the engine over here to the left, and my engineer can nail that real quick, then I might do the 2.5 anyway.
Right.
Okay. But yeah, our objective here is to get as many people out of there as possible, as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. Now, from a chief standpoint, let's go back to our participants. Let's get a chief to chime in, and let's say that Larry was doing everything he said. Okay, Larry's the first engine, and let's say the second engine's getting a water supply for Larry. And now you're the first chief coming in with 2 engines on scene. Let's get a chief to raise your hand, and let's have you come in and build your plan off of these guys. So somebody raise your hand if you're a chief. Kelly, right? Kelly, go ahead and activate your mic.
Hey, Chief, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Hey, good morning, guys.
Morning,
Hey,
brother.
guys, so if I'm a chief, I'm going to start setting up a division and then probably a group. Have a division alpha, or just you really even start with a division alpha there and give them the tactical objectives of getting that hose line between the occupants and the fire, and then evacuating occupants as soon as possible.
Good.
Like you said, if you got 2 engines there. Second one, definitely confirm the water supply, and then just assign them to Division Alpha to assist with that. Sounds like being happy hour, it's going to be all hands on deck,
Yep.
getting people out of there. After that, probably, this gentleman said they do a 3-3, so 3 engines, 3 trucks. Really, it's going to be an all hands on deck. I'd probably take that second or third due truck and have them assess for a vertical ventilation to help clear the heat out of there as well if needed. But with a high occupancy load, it's going to be evacuation and rescue. It's going to be that top priority.
Good.
So
it's fire attack, rescue, vent, and medical,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Good.
Exactly.
Okay, good. And so if we look back at the A side here, you've got there's an ancillary egress point right here that I don't see if you can see it here. Right here. See this little
Yep.
green door?
Yep.
Okay, there's
can see it.
that's an ancillary exit. That may or may not be, people may or may not be flooding out of that thing, and that may be another point of attack. Okay, so maybe this is the alpha side. We're attacking from here. The Bravo's back over here, and we're looking at the back. I'm not expecting a whole lot of people coming out the back of this thing unless there may be people in the kitchen working. That could totally be possible, and they maybe get stuck back here unless see the hinge right here on the bottom of the gate. So they could maybe work their way to this gate on the Charlie Delta side and flee that way. And so, opening this up for those occupants, if maybe the cooking staff in the back, opening up this gate, opening up the back door, you may have people flooding out the back that you don't realize. So maybe a division alpha, division Charlie, to your point. Maybe my alpha is going to have crews going in here and going in the left, and my Charlie is going to be in the back and getting people out the back over here. But you're right on the objectives. And, I'm thinking to myself, if I've got trucks coming, my first truck is going to be on the ground affecting, opening up the building, forcible entry, assisting with evacuation, forcible egress, if you will. And then probably my second truck would go to the roof, and I keep both trucks intact, whether it's a 3 or 4 person. I'm going to have a roof division with a truck on the roof. But probably my first truck is going to be on the ground doing forcible egress. And that's, opening this door if it's not open. It's opening this gate and going in here and forcing these doors if they're not open. And coming back around here and, opening up this door if it needs to be, supporting the engines, et cetera, funneling people away, and don't take for granted that you're going to have a real easy medical issue here, right?
Right.
You could have a huge medical problem. You could have 50 people. So you might have an MCI right on upon arrival. Okay, good. Hopefully we get to this point right here, right?
Yeah.
So good. Excellent. So let's talk ICS on this a little more. So let's see. Let's do a point to search it. Search for 2 with heavy fire beneath you. Fire start in the homeless camp. That would change your victim profile. Yep. So a couple of things on ICS on this. I think you could argue Alpha or Bravo here. I think Bravo makes a lot of sense because of the attack point. If you do have crews going in this door, then you probably are going to have an Alpha, even though it's the same space in the same building. An Alpha and a Bravo makes sense because you're going to have operations on both sides, access, egress. That's where your accountability is going to come from. And then potentially a Charlie over here. And, you know, to me, this is at least 2, if not 3 alarms if you have that many people, plus the medical component. So an Alpha and a Charlie at least, maybe a Bravo, a roof, and definitely medical. And as we, you know, transition to incident stabilization and our secondary searches are going and the fire's knocked, we might have a RIC team, but I'm not going to worry about RIC too early if I have a high to confirm victim profile with a bunch of people pouring out of this thing. But RIC will definitely be a priority as more companies arrive. Okay. All right. Thanks, fellas. So let's look at the review guide on this one, just to kind of give everybody the same look. So again, you download your tactical review guide here, and it's the same thing, right? Same format, en route, arrival considerations, ops, etc. Okay. And so for this, we wrote here, set up command, objectives are fire attack, surge, vent, medical, just like you guys said. Perfect. Ensure at least 1 transporting medic on scene and available at all times. So if you have, you know, 5 patients, that's 6 medics. I know some of your systems can't support that, but do the best you can. In a perfect world, I like to have 1 ambulance per fire victim plus 1. The 1 is for us or an unknown victim. The reason why 1 medic unit per fire victim is fire victims are typically more labor intensive than your garden variety chest pain call. You're probably going to have, you know, 2 or 3 firefighter medics in the back. So that's just a rule of thumb. If you can get by with less, great. Notice we have Division Bravo initially, and then possibly a Delta. Okay, good. And then this kind of gets into the details of extinguishment. Notice what we said here. Initial attack from the B-side entry doors based upon fire escalation. Fire appears in the kitchen, as is often the case in restaurants. On the B-C side, it's extending rapidly through the structure. This is a 3-line fire. Inch 3/4 should work, but be ready for a 2.5. 2 attack lines and a 2 out line is likely minimum, and the 2 out is based on your victim profile. You may not have a 2 out line needed if you have a victim profile based on your SOGs. Some SOGs require a 2 out line or a backup line in place all the time, or an IRIC all the time, even in a known victim. Some don't. Some have discretion based on the victim profile. If you're short-staffed, wait for additional companies and personnel before mounting the proper attack. That doesn't mean you can't do what? Transitional or attacking from the outside, or make an egress path for the victims, which is the key here. Okay. Ventilation, vertical vent if your department performs vertical vent, but also consider what? Hydraulic vent. Hydraulic vent's a great thing. It's underutilized in my opinion. Positive pressure later, as long as there's no fire and you've got the fire under control and you have lines on the fire. Likely out the A side. Okay. All right. What's Kelly, what's your department stance on vertical vent? You do vertical vent, right?
We're pro vertical vent whenever possible.
Right. Good. And how many on your trucks?
3 to 5, the cross staff with a medic.
Okay. And this is Bellevue?
South Placer.
South Placer. Good. Okay. And so if you have 3, is it safe to say the 3 of you are going to stay together?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. A lot of times trucks will split. I can see a 5-person truck splitting 3 and 2. I have a hard time with a 3-person truck splitting. That's just not safe.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Okay, it's from Dave Roberts. Some of the officers in our command staff prefer to assign tactical supervisor positions such as ops and interior. Can you speak to that? Pros and cons. I'm trying to make my case for divisions and groups. Thanks, Dave. So if we look at ICS, if you go to ops, then you basically have given the whole fire to somebody else as the incident commander, and all you're worried about is PIO and maybe coverage of the city if you have to worry about coverage. Ops basically doesn't change anything for the people in the hazard zone who are working in the fire. The whole point of divisions and groups or using ICS, it's not just to make it easier and better for the incident commander. It's to make it better for the crews working at the task level in the hazard. So when you make ops, you did not make it better for the engines and trucks working on the fire. They still have to report to the same person. Your span of control is still blown out. It didn't affect the span of control. It didn't affect the radio traffic because you still have a ton of radio traffic because everyone's reporting to ops now. Versus a division, now you have, not only do you have less radio traffic, but you have your boss who is closer to you to support you at the doorway, for example. Whereas ops can't do that. Ops will probably be at the command post. And interior division on this is not going to fly because there's too many access points and the building is too big. So ops and interior are really not the appropriate fit for this fire versus Alpha and Charlie and maybe Bravo. You need to have multiple sets of eyes, and you need to have multiple tactical supervisors to help reduce your span of control, reduce radio traffic, and keep the Nash 5 from coming into alignment. Having one interior division soup or one ops, which is to me worse because now ops has Rick and medical and roof and everybody, which makes it better for the IC because the IC basically doesn't do anything now, other than maybe, like I said, PIO or station coverage. So Dave, I'd be happy to talk more, but I hope that makes sense for you. And, we want to build ICS from the bottom up, and skipping to ops basically skips divisions, groups, and branches and goes right to sections, which is missing how ICS is supposed to be built. And so we can talk more if you want. Just give me a call or email me at info@trainedfirefighters.com. Hope that helped. All right. Thanks, gang. Let's go to the next one. Next one's going to be a number 59, which is a theater.
Oh, yeah.
All right. If you guys can shut off your mics, we'll get some new folks coming in so we don't hear any background noise. Thank you. So this is going to be a theater on a Saturday at about 2 p.m. The people are inside watching movies. And it's on a main downtown street. It's an old theater. It's unsprinklered. This is the one I was telling you about. Literally, this is non-sprinklered. It's old. It's got a lot of flammables, combustibles, and it is not sprinklered. And it's attached to other buildings. This is the Bravo side. This is the Bravo Charlie corner. And this is the Charlie Delta corner. As you can see, there's some exits here. Not here. This is like a taxpayer almost to the back, but you can see the stairwell back here. So it's kind of funky and it's old. So that's our building. Our scenario is it's 2 p.m. on a Saturday. People are pouring out of this thing, and you pull up and you think to yourself, why did I come to work today? And so I'd like to get somebody who would like to volunteer to do this one. Isaac, you want to do it? Activate your mic, Isaac. Go ahead and activate your mic, buddy.
Morning, Chief. How you doing?
Morning, brother. How are you?
Better than I deserve.
Yeah, me both. All right. So what's your FPOD P?
Facts, I'm on a multi-story theater. Looks like a 3-story theater. Ordinary construction, 2 p.m. on a Saturday. Confirmed victim profile, that people pouring out. Probably has a basement as well.
What's your probabilities?
Probability.
You said basement. I would agree. It's confirmed victim profile basement. What's another probability?
I have a balcony, most likely.
Okay. Could you have a ton of people trapped?
Yes.
Yeah. So based on that probability and rapid fire progression, because of the age of the building and the combustibles inside, because you pre-planned it, did your homework, right? So you're thinking to yourself, oh no, this is bad. So based on your system, what would you call in addition to the first alarm that you already have?
I'm calling a third alarm, which is what we have built out. That's our kind of our max. I'd have to start getting very specific in my resources that I want after that, but I'm going to try and call the world to this.
Good.
Then it's also included on the facts is I have multiple, I have minimal points of egress, and I have multiple exposures as well.
Yeah. Okay. So what's our priority?
Life safety.
Okay, life. And then what's our strategy?
Offensive from the Alpha side there, and trying to get a hose line in place to put water in between victims and the fire. But most likely, we're just going to be evacuating until we get people out of the way. But
Good. Okay. Good. So our objectives are going to be fire tech, evacuation, medical, and probably some sort of vent, right? And the problem with this sucker is like we saw, you're going to have people potentially under this smoke trapped. They're going to be kind of come out. There's hundreds of people inside the building, and they're all trying to escape the fire, which means they're all trying to go out the way they came in, which means these doors right here, and it's going to be packed. Just think about the Great White Fire, and just think, oh no, this is horrific. So
best line placement might be from the Charlie side.
well, but we have to protect these people, right? Because
Yes.
the fire's coming at them, the smoke's coming, so the fire's coming, right? So can we forcibly, we talk about forcible entry, we need to do forcible egress for these people. And so we need to get them out, but we also need to put a hose line there to protect them from the heat that's coming at them, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's not to put the fire out. That's purely an exposure line on people. We're just keeping them, which is totally different thinking, right? I mean, when's the last time you're on a fire and you had to use a hose line to keep fire off of human beings? I mean, literally the people right in front of you. And if you don't put water on the fire or the heat, they're going to burn to death in front of you. That's just a different animal. So, if you've got people trapped, I'm going to want to have 1 or 2 inch and 3/4. I don't need a lot of, I'm not trying to put the fire out. I'm trying to keep the heat off these people. So I'm going to want a fog pattern. I want fog patterns. I probably want 2 inch 3/4. However, to your point, the actual fire attack is probably going to come from the Charlie side somewhere, right? We're probably going to maybe go up in here and flank it. The problem is if the best means to attack the fire is the front and we have to go over humans to do it, that's a whole other animal. And maybe that's what we have to do. Maybe there's a couple of inch 3/4 holding the heat and smoke off these people.
No, this was underneath our bed.
And we go over the top of them with 1 inch 3/4 and take that inside a little
I'm
further.
just changing because in the winter I keep my
Jim's still on.
winter gloves and
Yeah.
beanie on and stuff. So yeah.
Hey,
this
Jim.
guy-
Jim, could you mute your mic, buddy? Or I'll mute it for you. I'll do it for you. How's that? Does that make sense? I know that seems extravagant and weird and crazy, but the point is on these fires, we need to think out of the box. Because if we just let the smoke come at these people and go to the back, or we just, see that fire up in that window up there and just put water in that, we don't think about these people down below, we're going to lose them. A lot of people were trampled to death. A lot of people were asphyxiated because of the smoke. Some of the people that died didn't die of heat. They died because they were stuck in that pathway, and the smoke overcame them before the fire did. So, I mean, the pictures are pretty horrific of all the bodies they pulled out. Not all of them were burned. So you got to think outside the box on this. So maybe an Alpha and a Charlie. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Medical group for sure. Maybe ventilation group. Because if you get up on top of this and you get a good roof division going and open the top, maybe we pull all this crap off of them. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we change the flow path. So very important. If it was me, I'd put an aerial to this roof. I'd get at least 2 4-person trucks up there or the equivalent, as well as more trucks working for forcible egress, and trying to change the flow path of this thing, as well as trying to get lines on the fire and lines to protect the people. And then meanwhile, massive medic units, around to be ready to treat and transport. Okay, so Miguel, Chief, would you consider transitional attack from the Alpha side on this? But that's my whole point, is that if I could hit this fire from the window here, but think about it realistically, I don't see transitional attack doing anything on this. This is about putting the line between the fire and the people. Anything other than that is a waste of time, in my opinion. Okay, I'm just telling you what I think. If later on I get a 24-foot ladder and an engine company to put water in this window, that's a different story. Okay, that's good. But is that the tip of the iceberg? Where is the fire? If the fire is seated in the back in the stage towards the Charlie side, this is the tip of the iceberg, and the transitional attack won't do anything. If the fire is seated in the lobby area and it's rapidly going up vertically, then this still isn't going to do that much, but it's better than if it was back on the stage, 150 feet away. So again, you have to size up, and I'm glad that you brought up transitional attack, because I think that it's overused. I think the transitional attack is a great tool, but remember, it's called transitional attack. It means you're about to go in the building. And the time and effort invested in transitioning has to be worth the return on investment. And I just don't see that in this scenario. The building's too big. The victim potential is too high, and I don't think it would make enough difference. I hope that makes sense, Miguel. So, but don't take that wrong. I'm not discounting transitional attack as a tactic. I just think it has its time and place, and this may not be one of them. So hope that makes sense. All right, everybody. So what I'm going to do is kind of wrap up here. Hopefully we learned something today. So some things coming up. As always, Mastering the Fire Service Assessment Center is now available online. It's a great course. We're very proud of it. We've had almost 200 people sign up since we put it out across the country. We thank you for that. There's a company officer track and a chief officer track. Both are based on the book from fire engineering that I wrote called Mastering the Fire Service Assessment Center, second edition, 430 pages, chock full of stuff. That's included with your course. So if you buy the course, we ship you the book to your door. You can choose a company officer track or a chief officer track based on what you're going for. We also now include monthly webinars. So similar to this format, it's a lot of Q&A, it's a lot of discussion. They're separate than this webinar. So that's only for the students of the Mastering the Fire Service Assessment Center curriculum. Okay. The next Fire Sim Lab is Module 9, which we're going to talk about commercial and big box on January 18th next year. And I'm sure we'll all be happy to be out of this year. The next command show is a week from today on December 28th. A week from today, Monday the 28th. I'm going to be talking with a investigator from NIOSH. You always hear me talk about the NIOSH 5. That's going to be at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. You always hear me talk about the NIOSH 5. Well, I'm going to be talking to a NIOSH investigator, and we're going to discuss and corroborate the NIOSH 5 as it pertains to real life and investigations across the country of deaths, as well as command. Okay. Also, keep an eye out for this new course coming out, the Fire Sim Lab actual online course, which is what we just did, but it is self-paced. You get 100 sims, and we'll be adding to that too. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time. God bless you and your precious families. Have a wonderful Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next one, and you'll be getting your videos and your certs soon. So have a great week and a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Chief.
Thanks, brother.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Larry. You too.